For this video presentation, we will now be proceeding to the weaknesses or the disadvantages of quantitative research. So since quantitative research has its strengths, of course, it will be very evident for it to have its own weaknesses. So let us first discuss the first weakness, okay, of quantitative research. So we have the first weakness. Okay, first weakness. So the first weakness of quantitative research, okay, so in quantitative research, it is actually, or it requires a large amount of respondents. Okay, it requires a large number of samples or respondents. So it is essential in quantitative research to have large sample sizes. Why so? Because it is assumed that the larger the sample size, okay, the larger the sample size, okay, the more statistically accurate the findings. Okay? The more statistically accurate the findings. So meaning to say, if we have a large group of sample or a large group of respondents, our results will produce a much valid result. Okay? The results will provide a much valid generalization. Okay? So that is one of the weakness. Okay? It require a very, let's say, okay, it require a very large number of samples or respondents in order for us just to have a statistically accurate findings. Now, another reason why we need a large number of samples or respondents is that some characteristics, okay, some individual characteristics that are present on the sample size may not be present on the, let's say, may not be applicable. Okay? May not be applicable to the entire population. Okay? To the general or entire population. So remember that every individual has its own characteristic. Okay? And some of these individual characteristics are present on the samples we use. But there is a very big chance that this characteristic may not be present on our population. Okay? That is why we must require a large number of samples so that our findings can be much more accurate. Okay? And that is one weakness. Okay? Now, in connection with the first weakness, let us have the second weakness. Okay? Let's have the second weakness. Now, since we need to have a large number of sample or respondents, okay, quantitative research is assumed to be costly and time-consuming. Okay? Why? Because since we have a large sample size, or since it is required to have a large sample size or large number group of respondents, okay, the researcher must exert more effort. Okay? The researcher must exert more effort, okay, and time in order to go to places or let's say print out questionnaires. Okay, print out questionnaires or let's say conduct experimentation. Okay? It is time consuming, meaning to say the researcher must exert more time and more effort and more time so that they can, let's say, travel to places where the respondents are, or print out the questionnaires, or to conduct different experiments. Now, since it requires a large sample size and respondents, it is also costly. Why? So, for example, you have a sample size of 100. Meaning to say, if you have a sample size of 100, you need to have 100 different questionnaires or 100 different sets of experiments. And printing out questionnaires and making experiments are not always for free. They require expenses. You need to pay for them. Okay? The more the questionnaires, or let's say the more the respondents, the more the sample size, the more the questionnaires or experiments you need. And the more questionnaires or the experiments you need, the more money you spend, the more expenses you have. And the more expenses or money you have, the more the effort and the time needed to collect the money, to conduct the experiment, and to print and give out these questionnaires. Okay? The more the time you need to go to places to give out these questionnaires, to print out questionnaires, and to conduct different experiments. Okay? And that is a very huge gravity, or this weakness has a very huge gravity when it comes to quantitative research. Okay? Now, down to our third weakness. So let us have the third weakness. Okay. So the third weakness of quantitative research is that since quantitative research is concerned with data, okay, it is concerned with different data that are factual in nature, meaning to say they preserve facts or they preserve information in nature. Okay. Let's say the qualitative reasons. Okay. So since it relies more on the data, the qualitative reasons behind different phenomenon or phenomena are ignored. Meaning to say, quantitative research is it is too data driven. And since it is too data driven, the qualitative reasons behind different phenomena are ignored. Okay? The contextual factors. Okay? The contextual factors are ignored. Okay? They are ignored. When we say contextual factors, the environmental factors. Okay, the extraneous variables, meaning to say. So whenever we say extraneous variables, these are variables that come to our experiments or research unnaturally. So when it comes, or let's say, when the observable qualitative phenomena are ignored, quantitative research creates a natural environment. Meaning to say, we try to manipulate data that is not suitable for a certain variable. Okay? We try to modify data which is not applicable actually. It is not actually applicable to a certain variable or to a certain contextual factor. Okay? Because this contextual factor or these qualitative reasons are usually ignored. Okay? So that is the third weakness. So proceeding, we have the fourth weakness. Okay? We have the fourth weakness. So in the fourth weakness, okay, so the fourth weakness of quantitative research, most especially when it comes to descriptive research. Okay, when it comes to descriptive research, is that we do not have access, okay, or let's say some structured research instruments. Structured research instruments like questionnaires, okay, do not have access on collecting data regarding sensitive issues. Okay? And these sensitive issues can actually pertain to the different contemporary issues. And what are these contemporary issues? These contemporary issues are those problems or those societal issues that usually occur in the modern world. That is, for example, we have premarital sex. So premarital sex is having sexual intercourse before marriage. Okay, so we have, let's say, domestic violence. Okay, then we have the, let's say, SOGI interpretation. Okay, whenever we say SOGI interpretation, it pertains to our sexual orientation, gender identity, and gender expression. So that is SOGI. So these things or these issues are actually sensitive in nature. And these things that are sensitive in nature are actually not, let's say, they are not required, or they are not, they do not establish a certain data when it comes to quantitative research. Actually, these contemporary or sensitive issues will fall under qualitative research. Okay? Quantitative research do not have access to these sensitive issues because it uses data, not norms or not different societal behaviors. Okay? So that is one weakness. Also, since we do not have access to this kind of data, specific feedbacks or recommendations are also not easily accessible. Okay? So specific recommendations or feedback, okay, are not easily accessible. So meaning to say, for example, we have survey research. We conduct this research using survey forms and questionnaires, and we just give them out to our respondents. However, our respondents will just give us answers like yes, no, satisfactory, not satisfactory, something like that. But their explanation about that Okay, we do not have access to that. Okay, we do not have access to specific information or feedbacks. Okay, so that is one of the weaknesses. And another weakness is that, also related to the fourth weakness, is that quantitative research gives answer that must stand on its own. Meaning to say, it cannot be altered or it can't be changed. Can't be changed. Okay? So to summarize the fourth weakness, we do not have specific access to sensitive issues. We do not have specific access to recommendations and feedbacks. And also, we do not have access to change our answers. Okay? So that is one weakness of quantitative research. And we have the last weakness. So let us have the fifth weakness. Okay? Fifth weakness. So the fifth and last disadvantage of quantitative research is that or it applies when we conduct survey research. So in survey research, we all know that we use questionnaires or survey forms. Okay, now these questionnaires must be given out to different respondents. Okay, now if the respondents, okay, so the fifth weakness goes like this. If the respondents do not answer or give out participation seriously, the results will become invalid and inaccurate. Okay? So, meaning to say, the results can become invalid. So, when we say invalid, incorrect, and incomplete. Okay? Incomplete. And also, it is inaccurate. Okay? So, most likely, when we conduct quantitative research, especially survey research, the respondents do not answer the questionnaire seriously. Okay? Some respondents or some participants just give out their guesses. Okay? So, kumbaga, binabara-bara lang. Minimema-mema lang. So, that is one of the weakness of quantitative research. Some respondents do not participate seriously. Okay? Some respondents do not participate seriously. Okay? So that ends our discussion for the different strengths and weaknesses of quantitative research. Now, given that you have the background already, okay? Given that you have the background already on quantitative research, you already know its definition, you already know how to gather some information, okay? You know the different types of variables, you know its characteristics, strengths, and weaknesses. We are now ready to proceed to the different types of quantitative research.